welcome everyone, the 500 plus of you who are tuning in to this Canadian Food Innovation Network special presentation. I am super excited to be here today with two fantastic guests. For those of you who don't know me, I am Dana McCauley, the CEO of the Canadian Food Innovation Network. And today we are going to have a really interesting discussion about and I hope a hopeful discussion. I hope that everyone leaves here today really optimistic because we have two fantastic reports that I think point out some really great opportunities for Canada to grow and to be successful and to have a flourishing food sector. So we're going to be digging in to a CFIN report, the Canadian Foodtech Ecosystem in Canada report, where we broke down all of the information and metrics about food technology and contextualize it against agri-food technology, and MMP's Global Agri-Food Report, which points out Canada's ranking among other influential nations and highlights how we can succeed in this present moment and in every moment that we will face in the future. My guests are people who I think are pretty well known in the food sector. I have Matt MacDonald, who's the national leader of food and beverage processing at MNP, which is a consulting and accounting firm, very well known by so many of us who attend events because they're great supporters of bringing Canadian food sector leaders together. They're often speaking and sponsoring many of the events that you've attended across the country. And Sylvain Charlebois, who is a professor and the senior director of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, and the co-host of the Food Professor podcast, author of books and many, many, many academic papers, more than I can count. I simply just don't have enough fingers. And also, very soon this weekend, to be a syndicated podcaster on the Chorus Network. So congratulations to both of you on all your contributions to the food sector, and welcome. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. I'm really looking forward to digging into the reports and to sort of drawing some through lines. There's a lot of information coming at people right now, and everyone is putting so much of their time into navigating scenario planning and just generally trying to keep up with the news cycle. So I think if we can drill down and give people some really key takeaways, that would be a really great service to the food sector. Now, I wouldn't mind starting out though, just with a, sort of a question to contextualize. Like, my report came out February 4th, and it's quite backward looking in a lot of ways. It does highlight some opportunities for Canada's food sector to adopt technology and for us to invest more in technology and that kind of thing, but it's a little bit unaffected by the current news cycle. This report that MMP sponsored was also came out just before all this tariff stuff bubbled up, and I'm sure the research was done beforehand. From reading it, I think it's pretty evergreen, but is there anything that you guys would like to add, or contextualize? Do you feel like the findings in the report are as true as they were the day it was printed? And Sylvain, since you led the actual research piece, I'm going to just direct that question to you to start us off.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So first of all, we're grateful for MMP to support this. They came to us with an idea of creating an index of some sort of report that actually would become thought-provoking for the sector. They get people in the industry to think about the future in a positive way, looking at some of the gaps. But over the years, Matt knew that we've enjoyed comparing Canada or different segments of the country with other countries, other parts of the world. And we thought this was actually a great opportunity for us to compare Canada with other industrialized countries in terms of some of the metrics that we've come up with, like investments, the use of technology from farm gate to plate, how the sectors perceive reputation, priorities, all sorts of things that we actually looked at. We looked at several metrics, to be honest, and now we basically had to come up with a list of metrics to kind of come bring it all together. And we actually consulted work with MNP to come up with that list. It was actually a really pleasant project, to be honest, because MNP is out there on the ground working with companies. So we needed their collaboration to actually make it all real.
Mm. That's I just got off stage at the Restaurants Canada show and raced here to do this webinar, and that theme of collaboration was, really loud and clear, at that show. And I love that it spills over and that you guys are working together as well. Matt, maybe you can summarize and just tell people what did come out of your report? What is Canada's ranking, and is it good? Is it bad? Maybe you can contextualize it a bit.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I think one of the big things that we saw as MNP is trying not to even look at it in a black and white, good and bad, but almost where are the opportunities where we're industry leaders, and where are the opportunities where we still have some work to do. And one of the big items that we had put in front of Sylvain and his team was, give us some takeaways that this report can help us go to our clients, go to organizations like CFIN, go to policymakers, industry stakeholders, and say, these are the gaps in the current supply chain, or the current focus for the country within the industry of agri-food. And these are the ways that I think if we work together, to your point on collaboration, that we can see that improvement. And so, Sylvain talked about it from a technology perspective. I think one of the things that we saw specifically was food security. We have an amazing world-class primary agriculture industry in this country, but we don't always exploit it, maybe the best word, to our own advantage, right? There's a lot of
The
exports.
storytelling's lacking, I think, is what is that fair to say? Is that
Yeah, there's a
words
lot
you
of
with?
opportunities for us to take our primary ag and process it and turn it into finished goods within our own country, instead of kind of shipping it overseas and having that value add be distilled in other countries, right? And so what we try to do is use this report to say, how can these various industry stakeholders along the chain work together to find opportunities for us to really grow that industry domestically.
Yeah, and that's where, there's an interesting intersection between the two documents, the one that we published and the one that you guys created and published, is that we discovered that Canada has all this domain strength in that value added space, particularly when it comes to plant-based proteins. And interestingly, people often think that value add means, getting right to that B2C type of product. But in fact, where Canada is really winning in that space is in creating ingredients. So it doesn't always have to be that we go to market with, something that, is going to hit a store shelf. A lot of countries do value the fact that we can give them something that then they can customize or turn into something that's appropriate for their market, which is just another level of collaboration, isn't it? And co-creation, which
Yeah.
I think is really interesting.
Yeah, and I think just the one more point about from a Dalhousie MNP perspective, I think the reason why we wanted to work with Dalhousie is there and Sylvain's team is there wasn't enough real measurable data and actionable documentation that we could take to policymakers or take to the industry and say, these are the gaps and we all have a role to play. I think that there's been bite-sized pieces in the past where it says, this is the issue with retail, this is the issue with primary production, this is the issue with policy, but they've all been very siloed. And we wanted a document and a report that could be looked at from a fulsome perspective to say, each of us have our roles in how we got here, and each of us will have our roles in how we can improve it.
And that's so valuable, right? Because even though the three of us are really well regarded, we've worked hard to earn, reputations as trusted suppliers of information. It's still our opinion unless we have the data. And I think that I had another question in mind, but I want to zip to the recommendation out of the MMP Agri-Food Analytics Lab report that talked about, Canada developing a robust, detailed food strategy, because I think that without the data, we can't actually do that, right? Because strategies and getting a whole group of people rallied around a cause and creating, objectives and action items does require, that. And in some ways, I think there's a lot of people working on kind of filling the pantry with this data. Yet we don't really seem to have anybody kind of leading on that. There's people working on food systems. There's people working on food sustainability, and somehow all that kind of has to come together. You guys, of course, are coming at it from a similar angle from me and my team, which is looking at economic development. So, what should be optimized to help Canada develop that pillar of a food strategy, that economic development and global trade piece? And I don't know which of you would like to start, because I think you probably both have great opinions. So, Van, I'm just going to let you jump in, and then I'm going to give you, Matt, an opportunity to build or to add texture to what Sylvain says.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, basically, stating that Canada needs a national food strategy is stating the obvious. I think it's been mentioned 100 times by many people over the years. But when I think about a food strategy, I think about not only commitment from all levels of government, not just the federal government, but all levels of government. We all know I've my family and we've lived in many parts of the country, and we're well positioned to understand and appreciate that all regions have something different to offer. How do you gel all that into one vision, I think is the challenge for Canada. And also I would say it's the execution of the strategy as well, the commitment that is actually quite critical. And I think the big piece that is coming out of COVID particularly is the autonomous nature of our food systems. Like how do we actually produce? And I know there are a lot of fans out there that revere the concept of food sovereignty, which is great, but we're 41 million people with a, a lot of resources. We can offer a lot.
We
The
can be
world
part of
wants
the solution for others, right? Yeah.
the world wants Canada on their plates, and so there are tremendous opportunities to think about production, efficiency, capacity, to feed ourselves and beyond. And that's really, I think, the leap that we may want to take at some point as a nation that would be embedded in that strategy eventually.
Yeah, no, and to just build on that before I get to Matt, we have so much to offer in terms of our output, much more than we could consume on our own when it comes to, just agricultural products. But then we also have this outsized ability, because we have an amazing education system turning out fantastic, master's and PhD students who can unpuzzle these really big problems and develop technologies. So we have that we can offer to the world as well. And I'd love to see that personally embedded into a food strategy, is how do we implement and adopt technology at home, but also help others around the world to do more with what we've created to help solve their problems. But I digress. I promised Matt an opportunity to speak, and then couldn't resist the opportunity to make that point. So over to you, Matt.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that, we've talked about before, and I've said so many times in the past, is one of the things that we can't change about Canada. It's one of our best things, but it's also a challenge, is our geography, right? We're a very large country, and we have, you know, low concentration of people in a lot of our areas. And that is one of the greatest things about our country from a travel perspective, but it also is a challenge from a logistical perspective. And so we can't we can't change that, but there is an opportunity to leverage technology to enhance our efficiency, right? I think one of the things that I said to you on another call was we're not going to make Toronto closer to Saskatoon. It's the same distance. Doesn't matter what the
I
technology
keep
does.
trying to fold the map up, like in the old days, remember the accordion maps and have
You know,
these cities touch, but it doesn't
doesn't
actually
work.
possible. No, not with
No,
the way quantum physics works,
I
unfortunately.
no.
think from the CN Tower you can see Saskatoon. I'm not sure.
At the very top.
Yeah.
But I think, but that's where technology can shrink the distance from a logistical perspective. And so it's how can we find and advocate for us not only developing our own IP in Canada, but keeping it here and leveraging it for our own industry growth. I think about one of Dana, one of your members that's also a client of ours that's done a lot of great things in the restaurant space around using technology for automation in the kind of grilling space. And
Oh yeah, you're speaking of Gastronomist, the
yeah,
Oakville-based restaurant robotics
yeah.
and automation company.
And
Fantastic
it's
member.
just a great example of innovation that's really disrupting a age-old concept of flipping burgers. It's been around for quite a while, but it's a great example of where technology can be developed that really can impact, Sylvain, to your point, the global industry, right? But we don't want that IP and that development to be thought about here and then enacted somewhere else, and us not able to use it and leverage it within our ecosystem here. And so we really wanted the report to highlight what are some things that we can do to improve our own ecosystem, but also to enhance the global agri-food industry and really our part as a leader in it.
If I may, Dana, I
Please,
just
yeah,
want to
jump
add
in.
to Matt's comment. As an academic, as a researcher, and I do help out with startups as you guys do as well. And the biggest frustration I have is the lack of data we have access to in Canada. It's just unbelievable. And I collaborate with some colleagues over in the United States, in Europe, in Asia. The amount of data they have to support startup is unbelievable. In Canada, we often fly in the dark. We have to guess if there is data out there, it's expensive as well. There's some good data, but you got to pay for it. And some countries, when we did our benchmarking exercise with MNP, we did notice that some countries made a deliberate effort to democratize data as much as possible to support the startup, to support innovation in general. And if there is one thing I want to throw out there today is exactly that. We need to be able to empower our startups to fly less in the dark from now on. That's really a key thing.
Such an interesting point, and I often say that Canada doesn't have a startup problem. We're really good at that sort of incubation, the rinse and repeat, sort of types of incubation programs where, identify your value prop, prove your value prop, etc. And but we do seem to have a real problem with scaling these companies, right? We know from our report that we are globally competitive on like seed and Series A funding for investments for startups. And then once they've proven that they have product market fit, we're like, okay, go do your thing. Come back when you're, $10 to $50 million company, and then then we'll start investing in you again. So it sounds like it's a data investment, it's a money investment, but how do we, I don't think we have enough time to tackle, the data piece, but Matt, I'm sure from your practice that you see a lot of companies who are, looking for funding of all kinds, whether it's non-dilutive or dilutive. And what are the value propositions? What's getting VCs and private offices to sign those big checks, those Series B? Like what can we do to get more of that? Is it a a communication problem from the side of the companies? Is it a culture kind of a problem among our VCs? I'm really curious to hear your insights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think that we've talked about it already. I think data is a big piece of it. Having a good idea is in some ways the easiest part. Executing on the idea is difficult, and getting the funding to execute is even harder. One of the things that I would say that the US does just better than us, they're stronger at it, is supporting their ideation and their startups with the background information that a VC or an angel investor or a family office can come in and say, this is what we're investing in. One of the things I've said to people is I love Dragon's Den and Shark Tank and all those shows. I think they've done amazing things for entrepreneurialism and innovation.
They create the startup culture, yeah.
One of the negatives to it is I think that we've normalized the concept of I have an idea, give me money. And that what you see on Shark Tank is how it is. You kind of go get in front of an investor, give them a 20-minute pitch, and they give you a big check. And that's just that's a Hollywood version of how it really is.
Sure.
There's significant due diligence that all VCs put in. And I would say that we need to do a much better job at understanding what are the headwinds that we're up against, and not just the data that supports this is how we're solving this problem, this is the better mousetrap idea, but also what's the size of the prize, and a real look at the opportunity and the opportunity cost of what we're trying to do. I think one of the big pieces that we're challenged with in this country is our retail environment is extremely consolidated, right? We don't have 50 different retailers to choose from. And when you look at the US, one of the examples, again, I've given many times before, is I always love going to the grocery retailer Publix in the southeastern United States. They have roughly the same number of locations as Loblaws, but are significantly more compacted from a geographic perspective. And so there's a lot of regional players like that in the United States market that startups can test their product, take the data, and then roll it out nationally. We just don't have that in Canada. And so that's the responsibility of the innovator or entrepreneur to understand that that's a headwind. But it's also our responsibilities as industry stakeholders and advocates and advisors to say, how can we help to kind of shrink that gap, right? And I think that's the point that I had before is, how can we encourage policymakers and retailers to work together to, from the ground up, try to create more opportunities for startups to flourish and not have to go south of the border to grow their business. But I would say that understanding your business, the headwinds is definitely a significant gap that I see in startup world.
Yeah,
No,
no,
great.
it's true. Don't go ahead.
Sorry, Dane. Great points, Matt. I just want to tackle 2 points. The first point, capital markets. Let's be really honest with ourselves today. When you look at capital markets, I mean, we're up against fintech, we're up against pharmaceuticals. When you talk to VCs, they're looking for high margins and they want to get out as soon as possible. Let's face it, the agri-food sector cannot do that. We cannot compete. So education is a big piece. I'm involved with CDL, Rockies in Calgary, and we often sit down with investors saying, you know what, you're going to have to be patient here. And margins aren't the same as in fintech, for example. And but it's worthwhile. Once you get going, you can actually make quite a bit of money if you're committed to it. And that's kind of the information we need to get out there a little bit more with capital markets telling, this is worthwhile. There's a lot to look at in Canada. It's the mindset needs to be a little bit different compared to other sectors in our economy where it's quick and easy, high margins. It's just not the same at all in the agri-food sector. And just to finish off on Matt's point about consolidation, for several years now, we've heard, Canada's Canada's food distribution sector is highly consolidated. Well, we actually did the work with MNP. We actually compared Canada with other countries around the world. Are we actually that consolidated?
On that per capita thing, I'm
Well, the
curious about
answer
that.
is yes,
We
actually.
are,
So if you
okay.
look at the top 3 players in Canada, there's no other countries in the world, in the developed world, where you find the 3 top players occupying almost 70% of the market. That is a lot. And so
Even in a small country like, say, France or Holland, you're still
exactly.
seeing more
I
diversity.
mean,
That's so
Walmart is
interesting.
number 1 in the US, that's 20%. Loblaw's number 1 here in Canada, it's 29%. Just there, it gets tougher. It gets tougher for startups to get in there. But the 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 hope that I have, that I dare to have, is the code of conduct, which was just operationalized a few weeks ago, and we had Karen on our podcast about a month
Wonderful.
ago, and I'm hopeful that the code of conduct in Canada will democratize food distribution in Canada, allowing startups to have better access to consumers moving forward. I may be naive. Some of you may say, Sylvain, he's out to lunch. It's never going to work. I think it's going to work.
Your
I
trust.
hope
I
it's going to
like your
work.
optimism.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's make it. Let's do it.
I think that on that point, I want to go back to the investment thing for with one quick comment of my own, but I'll work backwards. I do think that a silver lining to this tariff situation is that I have just seen, and everyone has, I'm not unique, this incredible groundswell of people wanting to support Canadian brands. And I am seeing, just as a consumer myself, going to the grocery store, how many end caps and how much signage the homegrown heroes are getting. So I think that that might be a help as well.
So
But you
we
said
just had a
something.
survey. Sorry, Dana, to your
Yeah.
point, I just have to
Oh
throw
yeah, it
that
was
in there.
yesterday's grocery business or Canadian Grocer
Yeah,
magazine. Your editorial.
61% of Canadians are willing to pay 5 to 10% more to buy Canadian versus a competitive product coming from elsewhere. So now it's a survey. I get it,
There's
but
a gap between
I've been
attention
doing
and
this for
action
25
sometimes.
years. I've never seen a 61% ever. So
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, Dana. I'm seeing the same thing at the grocery store.
So that's
And I think
very hopeful and adds to your point. You said something interesting, though, in the first part of your last answer, Sylvain, where you talked about how the companies who are looking for investment have to educate the VCs. And I have been talking to a lot of VCs recently. Last week I was at Fasken's office in Vancouver. We had about 100 people come together and had an amazing panel. And one of the things that I think is under-communicated to the ambitious, ready-to-scale companies is to understand that the funds can't be super patient because they need to circulate their money on sort of like a decade-long basis, right? Like there's a 10-year type of a cycle. And if they don't have some good results, they can't raise the next fund because most funds are not just one
Yep.
person writing a big check, right? So there's probably there's probably an interesting co-education piece that has to
That's true.
happen.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Matt, were you
and it's
trying to poke
also
in? Sorry about
well,
that.
yeah, it's also about celebrating wins. I think one of the things that we as Canadians are uh, we're polite to a fault, right? And we don't take the wins maybe like our neighbors to the south and celebrate them quite in the same way. I would say that we're at times even uh, not embarrassed, but we shy away from success in
We're
the
too
spotlight,
humble.
right? Humble, sure.
Yeah.
And I would say that one of the things that we're trying to do more as M&P is when we have clients, when we're working with the organizations that are our clients and they have had some success, whether it's through an exit or a new listing or just helping them get to those levels, is celebrating that success. And one of those areas we're seeing now in this kind of nationalist kick is tell us what are the Canadian companies, tell us how to support Canadian businesses. And I think that's where we need to do a better job at educating the general public that these are your Canadian alternatives. These are Canadian success stories, and being proud of this, and helping the industry to succeed, kind of one win at a time.
The one
Yeah.
thing, Matt, you just got me thinking. Yesterday, I was actually having lunch with the president of Maple Leaf Foods, and we both came to the same conclusion with Canada and Canadian companies. We need to get better at branding, you know, like
We
branding
do.
companies, branding products, creating brands. When I was living in Austria, I visited Red Bull. Like, talk about a powerful brand, like Red Bull came out of Austria in a city of 20,000 people. Like,
I had no idea. That's so interesting.
it's just so unbelievable. We can do this in Canada. We can actually, but I think we need to do a better job going back to Matt's point about pride and audacity. That's what you need to build a brand in Canada. And going back to Maple Leaf Foods, they're starting to, and I'm sorry to drop a name here, but
No, it's
Maple
okay.
Leaf Foods is pivoting towards becoming a CPG company.
Yeah.
And to be a CPG company, to be good at branding, they have 39 brands now. It's incredible. And they're going to be focusing on those verticals and promoting these products. In 10 years from now, Canadians will know, oh, I know that brand. I know that brand. I know that product, and it's Canadian. So they'll
Yeah.
connect the country with the brand, as we do with Red Bull and Austria.
Yeah. No, it's a good message. It's really interesting. Because all of these innovations and all of this good branding and all of this good storytelling and and pride are important, but if you can't get your product to market because of the cycle or the onerous pathway ahead that we put up on the regulatory frameworks, then there's an issue. And I know that a big part of Canada's brand internationally is that people trust us for having safe food. So your report talked about, and our report talked about how regulation needs to be re-examined and rethought. And obviously we want to maintain healthy supply chains for Canadians, and that international reputation is so important. We don't want to damage it. But what were the thoughts that surfaced, and what was the sort of the takeaway from the MMP global competitiveness report around regulatory?
Matt, you want to start, or should I
Sure,
start?
yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, so
you go.
I would dare ask our audience, how many people here know that according to the Global Food Security Index, there are three axes to that index: food safety, food autonomy, and food production. Under food safety, Canada is ranked not number 10, not number 5, number 1 in the
I
world.
know. I
In the
love that.
world.
It just makes me feel all tingly and happy.
And this is not something that we talk about a whole lot. I mean, from a food safety perspective, we actually get things done. Look at the avian flu situation.
Right? That
And
so-called invisible border hasn't prevented us from losing, like we're in such much better shape.
on biosecurity, we do a very good job with the leadership of the CFIA and the provinces and boards. They're doing a fantastic job monitoring risks, and farmers are working together, and they're minimizing risk as much as possible. And especially right now with this influx of 3 billion birds coming from the US into Canada over the next month or so through the Great Lakes corridor. I mean, risks are huge, and a lot of farmers are losing sleep, but we do such a good job monitoring some of these risks, and we never ever talk about it. And I think we should do that more. So from a regulatory perspective, I honestly have zero concerns whatsoever. In fact, I would say, and it's coming up these days a lot, we talk about bureaucracy. I certainly would, relook at some of the redundancies between different layers of government between municipal, provincial, and federal. Whenever you talk to a startup, whenever you talk to someone who's building a plant, it comes up a lot. And this is one thing that I think as a country we need to address, but it involves all levels of government, not just one.
True, but I would say, here to telling the whole world how safe our food is and championing that, because it's not just a 1 year, one time we got to number one. Like, this is a long-standing trend. However, I would love to see a focus on fast tracking, or, and I don't mean by cutting corners, I just mean by prioritizing companies that are bringing particularly, biotech backed types of new and novel ingredients to market. Because the fact of the matter is, if you take, the polyphenols out of grapes, and you use some precision fermentation that's been well tested, and you make a clean label ingredient with it, that shouldn't be that hard. So I do think in this present moment where we want to penetrate a lot of new markets as quickly as possible to, maintain our volume of international sales, that I personally think that on that innovation side, getting things that are low risk to the top of the docket and putting them through the due process as quickly as possible would be very, very beneficial for a lot of Canadian companies. But, I want to have my cake and eat it too, I guess.
Yeah, and that's always the challenge, right? Is you can over regulate, and then you get unlimited safety and unlimited R&D, but that creates excess red tape, right? And so it's, how do we find that balance of making sure that we have process, and we have R&D, and a supply chain that is safe and productive without it being punitive to processors, and just financially not sustainable. I would say that one of the things that ties into this piece that we talked about in the report a little bit was just from an investment in infrastructure. And when you compare us to, some of the European countries, but specifically the United States, we have historically significantly underinvested in infrastructure from a process
Absolutely.
level.
Oh, so true.
Automation, like, just not even just some of it's technology overlap, and some of it's just straight up machine manufacturing. And those investments directly correlate with food safety, because if you are using the latest and greatest innovation and machinery and technology, it automates a lot of that food safety piece.
Well,
Because
just machine learning, right? In the QA process, a fairly recent innovation in the last 3 to 5 years, it's ramped up. A sensor, a probe going into food that records data is always going to be faster and more accurate than a person who's like, and where's my pen? It's like, it's just, the companies like PNP Optica and Sabermetrics and, who are just doing incredible work in that food safety space in modernized and digitally enabled manufacturing environments is like, wow. Yeah, your accuracy and your throughputs and your waste goes way, way down.
Just to add to the automation part of Matt's comments, I would go in further. At the firm level, absolutely, I think we need more investments in robotics, automation. I think it's clear, but I'm seeing it already. Like, I'm seeing some investment, some movement. I think COVID really got a lot of companies to think differently about HR and optimization. So I'm certainly seeing it. And frankly, the investment in the middle mile in Canada has been unbelievable the last 3 years. All distributors have actually built state-of-the-art facilities across the country. It's just been amazing. And I've toured some of them. Actually, it's been impressive. The big problem is, from Ontario to Vancouver to Prince George, there's just no efficient, reliable gateways and corridors towards Asia, and in the east, we've been blessed with the St. Lawrence Seaway. There's no water out west. We need to create that St. Lawrence Seaway west to make sure that it's
Get your
cheap.
spoon. We'll all go and have a digging bee.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that we need to dig a river, but we need
No.
to efficient railways, reliable railways, resilient railways, to actually take advantage of some of these great opportunities in the Asian Pacific market. Because if we are to grow beyond, we've been talking about our reliance on
Right.
America, and 70% of our exports go to America right now. That's going to change. We need to be ready for that change. We need to empower our companies with better infrastructure, logistical infrastructure, east and west as well.
Yeah, no, you make
So
a
when I
great
was out
point.
for dinner the other night and they were serving Alberta oysters, I shouldn't have ordered those.
No, no,
I don't think so, right?
no.
Okay.
I'm really glad
No.
you survived and you made
Okay.
it here, Matt,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
that is a testimony to how healthy and how robust your digestive
That's right.
system is.
Heavily invested.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you guys. I know that I could continue asking you questions and sharing perspectives for, another couple of hours, but I have been seeing the chat popping off while we've been chatting, and I know that there's a lot of good questions in there. So I'm going to invite
Yeah, we're
Adrian.
getting some great comments. I've been reading a lot of them.
I haven't been able to keep track. I've been
Yeah.
so focused on you guys. And but Adrian Essenheim is our marketing manager and the person who's handling all the back end for today's webinar. And she's going to pop in and ask us some of these really good questions. And thank you, by the way, to all the people who have signed up and participated today, and to those who listen later on recording. I know I was over at the Restaurants Canada show earlier today, and there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I can't wait for the, tonight to get to the recording. So I really appreciate so much interest in what to me is a really vitally important topic. So Adrienne, over to you.
Absolutely. And it has been a really exciting group chat over there. We've been having fun. A couple of questions for you all. Do we have tariffs between provinces in food?
Oh, we might not have tariffs, but man, we make it hard for people to do business across those really, dotted line borders. What we have are and here's a regulatory nightmare. Say you're a bakery and you have national distribution for sliced bread, most ubiquitous thing that is in most homes. Did you know there are 37 different packaging regulations that you would have to comply with, which means that you would have to have many different types of packaging and many different types of messaging, even if it's the same packaging for some of those regions, to be able to sell your product nationally. So that's just one example. I'm sure the gentlemen have some others, but
Tons. Yeah.
we make it hard as hell, man.
I mean, I think it's a work in progress. We've seen some traction, some changes. Just before the election, I think there was a lot of discussion about interprovincial trade barriers, but food was excluded with the exception of alcohol. So we're still recognizing food as being a highly complicated issue. And Dana just explained one of them. I actually toured a plant just before the holidays in Quebec, in Shawinigan. It's a meat processing plant. It was provincially licensed. It wanted to sell to Metro and Los Sobes. It was scaling up. To actually get their federal license, it cost them $2.2 million. Like, how many small and medium-sized businesses have $2.2 million just to get a federal license? And now I'm happy that my own province has signed a reciprocity deal with Ontario. And so we'll be able to trade, but in between you got New Brunswick, you got Quebec. So there's still a long way to go, but I think we're starting to recognize that we're sometimes our worst enemy when it comes to trading it domestically and food. It's easier to sell, stuff to Singapore than it is to the province next door. That's the reality.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. Matt, you must have lots of customers, because I know you're a national firm. You might have lots of customers who would love to scale their businesses nationally, but struggle.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we could just go province by province. I could tell you all the stories. I don't think we have time for that. Yeah, you know, wine was a big one historically, very challenging. You know, we're starting to see that easier, but again, it's kind of trial through fire, and hopefully we can get the winery industry kind of working as a national cohesive unit on a future basis. But I would say anecdotally, we had one client that was in Sylvain's backyard that basically said to us it was easier for them to sell into Maine and into some of the other northeastern United States than it was nationally. And really the reasons were all of the things that we talked about. It was infrastructure of moving the goods. It was interprovincial trade. It was retail consolidation and opportunity. It was diversified consumer kind of fragmentation. They could sell it into 4 different cities that they could go one DC apart. And really, you know, I think that singular experience from our friends in Atlantic Canada is a great example of how this report ties all of those issues, that it's not one single shot that says, if we just fix this, everything's going to be great. There's a bunch of areas that we need to just increase our excellence meter at. And if we can do that, we really will see significant benefit as an agri-food industry, and not only help us to be more competitive on a national stage, but help us to be, you know, higher GDP, but also continue to have high food safety. We can buy Canadian, all these great narratives that go along with those investments.
Yeah, that was such a great question. Thank you to whoever posed it.
That was Daniela. Do you think the major Canadian players have the right mindset to drive innovation in the food and beverage market?
That's an
I have a hot one for you.
Sylvain can take that one.
Yeah, I have some thoughts, but you go first.
I think so. Absolutely. I mean, I deal with companies all the time. It's just sometimes, of course. I mean, the big issue is capital, I think. And I mean, going back to my lunch with Maple Leaf Foods yesterday, I did ask. I mean, what's the biggest, other than what we're going through right now with geopolitics? What else is keeping you up at night? And he did say skills and labor. That's missing. That's our fault as universities. I don't think we're pumping out the right people for the right time for the ag sector, the agri-food sector right now. We're forcing companies to train their own.
Yeah,
and
we need more co-op for sure.
Absolutely. So if you're an employee out there, please employ students during their degree, because curriculum can do so much. Curriculum are limited in their capacity to train your people the right way. Co-op is absolutely, I'm a big fan of co-op. Hire students and they'll be ready for the marketplace for the agri-food sector once they get out of their program.
I like that a lot. Sorry.
Can I just jump in though with one little sort of counter thing? I think the question is interesting, but there's only so many big companies in Canada. 90% of the food processing companies in Canada are small businesses. They have less than 50 employees. Many of them, you know, if you take a percentage of that, probably over 90% have less than 10 employees. They don't have, they have, you know, they contribute a lot to that 70% of the food that Canadians eat being Canadian, but they don't have the capacity to invest. Right now, their productivity is being sucked and sapped by, you know, just game planning and scenario planning and just trying to keep it together. So it's we have to find some ways, yes, to keep those big players leading, but we also have to, by in my opinion, help by auditing, by creating programs that connect those smaller players to the innovations that they can adopt quickly and effectively to, you know, release and give them access to more margin so that then they have some capacity to be creative, because there's lots of creative people in the food business. Most entrepreneurial people who gravitate to food, whether it's food service or food product processing, got into it because they have a creative spark. They just don't have any time right now to apply their creativity to innovation.
Sounds like we need a CFIN job fair.
Hey, everybody can come to my house. We'll do it there. No.
Come on over to the Food Innovators Career Hub.
Yeah, we do have the career.
I'll
career
bring
hub.
the wine. I'll bring the wine. No problem. Nova
Okay,
Scotia
a
wine.
bottle from, you can make a case with a bottle from every province and
Exactly.
territory.
I'll bring
I
the
like it.
I'll bring the oysters from Alberta.
After party at Sylvain.
Yeah.
Final question for you today. How could we persuade our major retailers to help Canadian startups with the type of useful data that is normally so expensive to
Oh,
buy?
that sounds like a Sylvain question to me.
Pretty please, can you share pretty please? I mean, listen, like Nick is their model is unbelievable. I'm so jealous. I would recreate Nick myself, but yeah.
Tell everybody what Nick is. Give a level set.
Nelson IQ. Nelson IQ. I mean, they get all the data. I mean, if you want to know what's going on, you look at their data. The aggregated data they offer is really amazing and very powerful. I mean, what I'm seeing are grocers that are actually making an effort. They're making an effort to engage with smaller suppliers, but they're under pressure. They're under pressure. I am hearing once in a while some suppliers that are, being delisted for one reason or another, and it's painful, absolutely. But at the end of the day, grocers have a reality to deal with, and you guys deal with grocers. Every data is sensitive. Everything is sensitive. And so, yeah, and that's why I created the lab in the first place at Dal, to actually, whenever we have data, we share with the rest of the world. So you can actually, figure it out as much as possible, but we can't get to the perfect data that Nelson IQ has. It's just impossible to get to. We've tried. We've dealt with Nelson IQ, but it's been so difficult.
Well, this is where it's great to be on a webinar and not have somebody who can, like, ping me with their BB gun or something, because Richard Gupta, our VP of Partnerships, probably would be upset with me, but I'm going to spoiler that we are working on a partnership with Nielsen IQ to bring more data at an affordable price to Canadian small B2C companies. So stand by. We're just trying to figure out how it will work mechanically. And I'm pretty excited about that because I do think that, like I think it was Matt said, you've got people flying, blind out there, and you can only do so many store visits, and you can only stand with your clipboard and watch, people for so long. And if you really want to act quickly, you do need that sort of cross the country kind of view.
Yeah, I would just say, to add to what Sylvain said, is that we do live in a capitalist environment, right? So grocery stores and supermarkets, their aim is to make money. They might have some moments of altruism or idealism, but at the end of the day, they're a business like any of these food manufacturers. And so the way to get them to do something is to incent them through capitalism. And so you're seeing that, and I've seen this in the last few years. We've talked about it as on my team now for 3 years, is the move to the better for you space, right? We've seen that pendulum swing. We just saw the recent deal with Pepsi buying Poppy in the US for $2 billion or whatever the number was. And that concept 5 years ago would have been crazy to think of that. But at the end of the day, large multinational F&B companies and CPG companies have seen that the boots on ground, the dollars are voting, and they want better for you products. So the same principle applies for how do we get retailers to be more cooperative, or how do we get them to do anything, is there needs to be a business case. And so I think that's what we've tried to do again with this report. And I'm not sure if Sylvain mentioned at the beginning, but we have this is a multi-year report for us. We're already working on the second year, and
that's right.
The real purpose for that is that we not only just sit in a kind of a silo and say, these are the issues and this is how we can fix it. But then when we do next year's and the year after that and the year after that, we can also measure how far we've come and where we've increased or decreased, and what that year over year opportunity looks like. And for me, that's the real opportunity that we see as MNP, is how can we use this data in an annual basis, but how can we use it over that 2, 3, 4 year perspective to measure, are we moving the needle, and where can we point to policymakers, retailers, processors, and primary ag to say, these are the areas that we're just not keeping up with the other sides.
Yeah.
And
And since you're at
beyond,
the RC show, Dana,
yeah.
it was a decision made between us and MNP to include food service for the second edition of the index. So we're
I
making
love that.
changes, we're making tweaks as we go along with our partnership. It's going to be great.
I'm really pleased to hear that. I think it's an
Yeah.
astute choice, because the convergence and you know, in the of those models, food service and CPG is just you know, escalating, but also yeah, it's just it's such a big part of Canada's economy, and a big part of what, you know, gives people a sense of what the whole country is about. It's interesting because, you know, that data, we can think about it in terms of you know, the lagging, you know, looking backwards, but also it hopefully, as we see trends emerge in your data and in CFIN's, we also hopefully will be motivating people to be like, oh, what, we're only like whatever number, you know, so for instance, on the Forward Foodtech 500 this year, there were 9 Canadian companies, and I loved it. Tyson McInnes, our Atlantic Regional RID, goes, well, next year I want there to be 15. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we need, right? And that's the other side of that humility piece, is also that hunger, you know, the 2 H's, humility and hunger. We got to keep humility low and hunger high, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we are pretty much at the end. I have really enjoyed this conversation. I always love chatting with
Me too.
both of you. First time I've had an opportunity to chat with you both at the same time. CFIN members, thank you so much for all these great questions. I hopefully will get a chance to download all of them and see some of the other curiosity points later. We have other webinars coming up, and we invite everybody to be part of our community on Yodel. So if you didn't get enough conversation, hike on over there, start a thread or join a thread, and keep the conversation going. Look forward next year to an updated MNP global competitiveness report coming. And of course, CFIN, we're just going to keep adding data, and we have a whole bunch of new things planned for you, including a really cool concept called the Foodtech Frontier 25, which just, yeah, stay tuned. They'll be hitting your inboxes soon. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And please reach out if you need or want or have comments about anything you heard today. Take care.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.